Hello. Oh, what's that? Okay, we're going to start this over again. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Aurora Connects. This is episode 5 for Friday, April 24th, 2020. Aurora Directs. My name is Josh Costello. I am the artistic director of Aurora Theater Company, and I am joined, as always, by our estimable associate artistic director, Dawn Monique Williams. Dawn, welcome.
Hey, Josh.
How are you today?
I'm good. Having a little deja vu.
All right. So let's start with this. Why don't we start with a quote? What do you got?
You got it. Today's quote is from the Book of Will by Lauren Gunderson. I said to feel again. That's the miracle of it. The fairies aren't real, but the feeling is. And it comes to us here, player and groundling alike, again and again here. Your favorite story just ended? Come back tomorrow. We'll play it again. Don't like the story you're in? A different one starts in an hour. Come here, come again. Feel here, feel again. History walks here. Love is lived here. Loss is met and wept for and understood and survived here. And not the first time, but every time. We play love's first look and life's last here every day. And you will see yourself in it, or your fear, or your future before the plays end. And you will test your heart against trouble and joy. And every time you'll feel a flicker or a fountain of feeling that reminds you that, yes, you are yet living. And that is more than God gives you in his ample silence. And then it ends, and we players stand up, and we look at the gathered crowd, and we bow, because the story was told well enough, and it's time for another.
I could listen to that quote again and again. Thank you for that. What? I mean, I don't even need to ask why you chose that quote right now. It speaks so powerfully to what we do. But I'm so glad to hear Lauren Gunderson's words. And you were at OSF when that play opened there, yeah?
I was, absolutely. Saw it 4 or 5 times.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Lauren, for writing those beautiful words. And thank you, Dawn, for sharing that with us to start the show. If people have questions or comments, what can they do?
They can write us at connects@auroratheater.org. If they're watching this live, they can comment right there in the YouTube box. But if they're catching this on the replay, that email address, connects@auroratheater.org, will work just fine to give us suggestions for future quotes or topics they want to hear covered on the show.
Thank you very much. And if people are moved to donate to support Aurora Theater Company as we try to navigate this storm and move on beyond 2020, you can go to Aurora Theater's website and click on the donate link at the top right. Thank you so much for supporting us in this very challenging time. We are going to be here on the other side. As soon as we're allowed to reopen our doors, we're going to be making more wonderful plays. And speaking of wonderful plays, we have some wonderful directors joining us today for the show. Thank you so much for joining us here, everybody. We have, who do we have? We have Jennifer King, Darryl V. Jones, and Barbara Damashek. Hello.
Hiya.
So Jennifer King, you and I have known each other for a long, long time since I was teaching at Cal Shakes and you were running the artistic learning department. And now you're at Napa Valley College and you've been an artistic director up in at Sonoma Rep. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm in Sebastopol.
Up in Sebastopol, and you've directed at Aurora, most recently Dry Powder, a couple of years ago by Sarah Burgess, and before that some of our readings in the Global Age Project, our new play development program. And then we also have Darryl V. Jones. Darryl, you and I have known each other for a long, long time. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Since we were at Boston University when I was an undergrad and you were in grad school. You've done all sorts of work around the country as a director at Arena Stage and elsewhere. You're what is your current position in title right now, Darryl?
In which job?
Well, tell us all of them.
Well, I am a professor at Cal State East Bay. I'm a lecturer in the MFA program at ACT. And I am the acting artistic director for the Lorraine Hansberry Theater Company, and I've just a couple of things I recently directed. The Devil's Muse. The Devil's. Oh my God, I can't remember the name of the show. It was Bessie Smith, the devil's music, the life and blues of Bessie Smith. There we go. And then also I directed Kill Move Paradise for Shotgun. But my favorites are the Royale and Detroit 67 that I did at Aurora.
All right.
The Royale because it was just so marvelous and so different and such a wonderful experience. And Detroit 67 because I taught Dominique Morisseau when she was at undergraduate school at the University of Michigan. And so it's just so wonderful when the student exceeds the professor. I'm so proud of her. So that was wonderful to be able to do that production.
Well, those are both lovely, lovely, very memorable productions. Thank you, Darryl. And of course, we have Barbara Damashek as well. Damashek, BD, welcome. You have directed many, many shows for Aurora. You wrote Quilters and were nominated for a Tony, I believe. You've worked all over the place. What's a memorable show or two from your career at Aurora or elsewhere that you want to share with us?
They're all memorable. The ones that's most with me right now is The Children, which is the last one I did, because it's very much captures our experience right now, that we are in this place of insecurity after an entire grid of structure has disintegrated. And there were so many things in that play that are still staying with me. It's amazing. And I think the thing is that, as directors, you live the plays you're working on. They're all pieces of lives. So this one is very memorable, the most recent one. Then others are memorable for different reasons. James Carpenter's performances always, but going way back to American Buffalo, Splendor, the amazing group of women doing that, and the incredible challenge of the play itself. And then the very first play I ever did at Aurora, where I was kind of replacing Danny Shea, which was called Public Jokes in Private Spaces.
Private Jokes, Public Places, I think.
Thank you very much. Which was one of the funniest plays I've ever done in my life. And it was kind of the launch of my time at Aurora. So that's going back many years.
All right, well, welcome. Thank you, all three of you, for joining us for this conversation today. We're going to get into it and start talking about the process of directing a play and sharing some insights with our audience into how we do this here.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do this just a little bit round robin style. And we want to start with you, Barbara, and just ask, what is your process for preparation? How do you get into your groove when you're going to start working on a show?
It's no different than, I think, actors, which is reading. You just immerse yourself in a project, in the text of the play, with no distractions. Go someplace where there's no phone, there's no distractions, no puppy. My puppy's in the other room. And I try to reach down deep into the play to find out what's underneath the play. Then the play starts triggering all kinds of things that I need to look up. So then it triggers a network of research for me, which I love. And I try to read as much as I can that the playwright has written. I try to find out the DNA of the world of the playwright and the mindset of the playwright. And it's like a pregnancy. And I don't think that process stops. It only stops arbitrarily when the play opens and I leave, because that process of discovery is going on the whole time. But I would just say one thing basically. This is probably not good PR, but a great director, Peter Brook, says that we work in this country in the rotten way, which is we have to decide so many things before we go into rehearsal. Whereas in Europe, they work with their costumes and their set. If they don't like that set, they throw the set out. But there is a certain amount of going ahead of the project just to make sure that what you're asking of your collaborators, the designers, is going to be sound and going to support the structure. I have to work through the whole play. This is after I've been reading, but I have to work through it physically just to feel the visceral life on the stage. And I work through it completely And that frees me to allow the actors to improve. But if we get lost or off track, I have a journey sculpted that I know will get us where we need to go.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, and Darryl or Jennifer or Dawn. Dawn has directed Bull in a China Shop for Aurora and is a wonderful director as well. If anybody else wants to jump in and talk about preparation, I'll say that for me, what was pounded into me in grad school was to narrow, to like get the play down to a single statement, like an action. What is the action of the play, right? Some directors I know prefer to think of it as a question. What's the central question of the play that then everything sort of relates back to? And I find that really useful for making all the other decisions that you have to make. You can sort of always go back to, well, how is the, what is this line central to the play? Do I need to make sure the set works in such a way that I can stage this line so that that idea stands out, so that the idea, the action of the play is clear. What other things do you guys focus on in your preparation?
If I may?
Yeah, please.
I love everything that everybody's saying, and there's a process that I go into, and I think I call it living the play, because when I'm preparing to do a play, in addition to trying to fully inhabit and understand the world of the characters, their internal lives, the psychological intent, not because I'm going to be playing all the roles, but so I can make sure that, that we're fulfilling the playwright's intent, and I'm getting the actors to fully invest in the roles that illuminate the story. But when I wear the play, when I'm preparing to talk to designers and all my collaborators, I start to go around and just see images and see life through the lens of the play. Sometimes I will just be walking around and going through my neighborhood or driving down the street, and I will see something and I'll say, that's an image I want to recreate on stage. That's a power that speaks to a particular theme or something in the play. And I start to look for those visual images in life and in nature that I can recreate on the stage to further tell story. So I love this idea of living the play and just walking around with that play in your life for months to prepare.
So I'm been a preparation queen all my life. I love to control. It's probably why I became a director. The thing is, though, is that I do a lot of, as soon as someone gives me a play and they say, I'm interested, would you like to direct it? I almost immediately start doing research because I'm trying to find my own connection to it, because I feel if I'm not connected to the piece, it will just fall on the floor. And so, but what's interesting is one of the things I do, Barbara talked about visceral, Darryl, you talked about seeing it. What I do is I actually type out the entire script, because I literally want to feel like the playwright, that it's going through me, and then I know every single word and every single punctuation so that I really have the text. And then I spend a lot of time after I've done all the research kind of dreaming, letting that go. And I things will come to me. I don't necessarily look for them, but I'm like, oh, that's it over there. That's it over there. Something will happen. I'm like, that's the play. And that can be sort of a bit like magic. And right away, what I love to do very early is I love meeting with designers, particularly. There's a particular set. I love set design. I love designers, period. But Tanya Oriana, who I did Dry Powder with, we have a history together, and I think are developing sort of a shorthand. But her and I just spend, I would say, hours. I mean, as soon as I know that she's got the contract with me, we are just talking for days about the play, because I'm really interested about how we create a world that is going to work off of people's unconscious, making conscious, specific decisions that you may not notice, but actually enhance the storytelling and the intent. So that's a little bit about how I work. There's lots more, but I'll just leave it there for now.
No, that's great, because we were going to get into the design process next, and that makes a lot of sense. Dawn, how about you? With what do you like to do with your initial conversation with designers. I should say, Barbara alluded to this earlier, but the way the schedule works, we only have 3.5 weeks of rehearsal before we start moving into the space and having tech and dress rehearsals and so forth. So it's really 3.5 weeks to get the play staged and pretty much ready to go, and that means that the design before rehearsals begin. So we need to have the costume designs. We definitely need to have the set. The set's being built at the same time as it's being rehearsed. So all of those decisions get made before the actors all get in a room together. So Dawn, how do you have that initial conversation with the designers to figure out what the world is that they're going to create before you even gotten in the room with the cast?
Yeah, well, it's interesting how Jennifer says that she, needs the play in her body. I don't know the play until I'm in the room with the cast. So my preparation just starts with 3 questions, and it's the exact same 3 questions that I start my design conversations with. And that's, what does the world sound like? And that's both like sonic landscape, but like literally, what is the music that these characters listen to in their iPods? Who's the character that invites me in? So I'm always kind of tracking who opened the door for me. And most often it's what we would traditionally call the protagonist, but not always. So like when I did Merry Wives of Windsor at OSF, the character that opened the door for me was Anne Page. And you would probably expect that it would be Falstaff, but it wasn't. It was the young heroine of the story. And the other thing that I'm always asking myself is, would it look like if it were a dance? So those are the 3 questions that guide my preparation. And that is exactly where I start with designers, because that's what helps me determine, what period does it need to be set in? Does it need to be period specific? Do we need to, be honoring the period it's written in or the period it's written for? Or can we do some post-apocalyptic thing? Can it be a fantasy? It's always guided by those questions. And because I'm not a designer, I have designed, but I am so not a designer, I leave a very wide berth for designers to bring their expertise to the project. So I know very little about what it should look like. I have very strong feelings on what it should sound like and how it should move. And then the rest, I really do rely on my collaborators to make me look good. But to Barbara's point about the way we do things in the States, it is very frustrating for me, because very often I'm not learning the things I need to know about a play until I sit down with a cast and hear them read it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Barbara, I know you, I always look forward to the first production meeting with you, Barbara, because you always have a document that you pass around to the designers that has some of your analysis and your thoughts about the play. What goes into that document? What are the kinds of things that you're looking for to share with people at that early point?
I'm trying to find seeds or germs of everything that I know about the play, but things that will, proliferate inside the designer's skill sets. So I articulate, the reason it's a document is I do spend some time on that document. Predominantly, the first thing to find is the world, which means the set for me. So the space, the geography, the architecture, the landscape. Sound is super important, and sound and lights are the same vocabulary to me. So often I make separate lists for the designers, as you know. It's the second phase is, the first phase is I make the long document, then I make separate specific lists for the separate designers. It's about the smell, the sound, the DNA of the world. And I think the designers are wonderful. They respond very creatively, and then they can go off on their own and, send me back a million images or where they're going with the design. And also I pretty much flood the page. I give more ideas than they're going to use. And I tell them, which one speaks to you. Pull out the one that speaks to you. I would say, to be fair to myself, I probably have privileged the ones that speak most strongly to me, but I just consider my role as the person who goes first, because in the searcher who goes first, because on our journey, the director is, I mean, after you've chosen, you guys have chosen the play for whatever reasons you've chosen it for the season, which is another question we could put to you. After that's gone, then there's a search that has to go on, and the director is ahead of everyone else on that search. All the other designers are probably working even more shows than directors are working, and they come on later, and then they start on the journey also. So it's about trying to get everyone on a shared voyage.
Great.
Darryl, what do you want to add to that?
Well, I want to second everything that everybody has said thus far. I want to add, this is an interesting conversation for me because as a teacher, I feel like in some ways it might have changed a little over the years. But because I was taught, and I was taught, and this is kind of pretty much the way that I work, that I want, my job as a director is to have a vision. And I work a lot with the idea of having a unifying metaphor. I like having that metaphor that's illuminating one of the themes or maybe several themes, and then trying to see in which design areas I can manifest that metaphor. But so I like to go in. I like to go in, and this is part of my whole living the play process, with having done some research in all the design areas, image research. Images speak so much to me. I would rather sometimes look at pictures than read. But at the same time, I know that it's my job to kind of say to the designers, these are some of the ideas and these are some of the thoughts and these are things that are speaking to me and these are themes in the play that are important to me. But I want to excite you. So I want to know how the play is speaking to you, what excites you about the play. And let's find a marriage of what's exciting you and what's exciting me. And the reason I'm saying that maybe things have changed over the years is because when I was in school, I was taught that the director has to come in with the director's vision, pretty strong, and share that with the designers. But I am finding that what I'm hearing that my design teachers are teaching is, you as a designer, you have to go in there to that first meeting with the director and have a really strong point of view already. So it's a mystery to me now as to how we're doing this, but it all seems to work out. And the last thing I will say is, oddly enough, for me, and I worked on a play with Paula Vogel once, the Mineola twins, and I expressed to her that sometimes the way into the play for me is through sound and music because I'm so musical. Mm-hmm. And she said she's the same way. She says she felt that all of our lives have this musical score behind them, if we can trace. And so, I feel very connected to the sound and the music in my work and how that helps to illuminate character and theme.
Can you talk just a little bit more about, you talked about an organizing metaphor, a unifying metaphor.
Yeah.
Can you talk more about what goes into a unifying metaphor and maybe even an example of one that you might have used for a play in the past? Like, what does that actually look like?
Yeah, I'm trying to, well, I could think of different, I could think of different kind of ways I've used it, but okay, I'm trying to think if I had a really strong unifying metaphor at Aurora for any of those sets, and I think that for the Royale we did, but I can't remember it, so I have to go to the most recent production, and that was Kill Move Paradise,
At
Shotgun Players, where the unifying metaphor for me was a slave ship. Which was, and you might not have seen that in the set, although if you look really carefully, you do see it. But that became the unifying metaphor because, and how did I arrive there? I arrived there because the play was about the the killing of African American young men in this country, and the whole history behind that and everything. And to me, the very first time I read it and I heard that they were in this Elysium, this sort of holding tank, it just hit. And when I read that, for some reason, I said, well, the people, when the African Americans first came here, they were in a holding tank. They were in a slave ship. And so I used that metaphor to ground the set design, and it also played into, well, once I had that metaphor, it plays into the lights and to the sound and everything. Another example, though, that maybe is a little more, and I'm talking way too much. I'll say this really quickly. For instance, I've seen one production of A Winter's Tale, and where the metaphor was actually, well, this is kind of obvious. It's a winter's tale, so we want the whole thing to be, in snow and in blizzard. But I like my example of the slave ship as a better example of unifying metaphor.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I like how that it feels like it's rooted in something in the text, and yet it opens it up in a way and provides another window into what's going on another level.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's talk about the rehearsal process. When you've got that first rehearsal, at our first rehearsals at Aurora, we gather everybody together. So it's the designers, the actors, the director, the stage management team, and then also the whole staff. The administrative staff is there, and often some of our board members and our sponsors. And it's a whole day where we have a meet and greet where we gather and have snacks and chit chat, and all the actors are excited to see each other because they've all been in other shows together before, and everybody's making small talk. And then we gather and we sit down and everybody introduces themselves, and then the director usually makes a statement that sort of introduces everybody to the rehearsal process and to the play, and sort of sets the tone for what this production is going to be about. And then the designers all make their presentations and show the scenic design, the model that the scenic designer has made, so everybody can get a sense of the set, the costume sketches of what the costumes are going to look like. Maybe the sound designer might play some of the music that they're working on. But Jennifer, let's go to you. Like, how do you go into that first rehearsal, and what do you like to use that director's statement to do?
Well, I love it because I think that I finally get to say, here it is. It's sort of like, this has been living in with me for so long, and I can't wait to just share with you what we're about to do. And so I really do have a concise vision about what it looks like. But I mean, of course, we're all on the same page as far as the designers. And so I love saying, hey, this is what the play is about. And so for Dry Powder, really sort of talking about them being in a war room, but they're in a glass tower, and they're a step up from everyone. And then that the costumes that they may be in suits, but they're going to war, and that's what they wear. And hearing all of the designers echoing our unified theme, I think is really, really helpful. And then hearing the play for the first time, it's just the best. I mean, it's because you've been living in it in your head, or like I've even had a couple students do scenes from it. I'm cheating, and then to be in the hands of some really, really great actors at the onset, it's just terrific. It's just terrific. And then I get like, oh my gosh, now I've got to figure it all out again.
Yeah, everything goes out the window sort of once you first actually
start
with everybody. Yeah, and that's part of the fun, is figuring it out and hearing it and knowing it. Barbara, what about you in the rehearsal process? What are some of the strategies that you use for talking with actors and getting everybody on the same page, or for staging, or anything you want to add to that conversation?
No, I mean, I think the thing that that the question is resonating with me about is that feeling of going in the first day and having, like I always say, it's like being pregnant with an elephant. And I can't wait to unload all the things that I know. And that process, there's no breath in that process, actually, for me, no real breath, until the play is staged. Because at that point, the actors take it over and I can stand back and do what a director does. It's just that since our rehearsal process is so short, it's a tremendous, and I think people don't really understand it, maybe not, but there's a pact between directors and actors. When actors come in, they've been doing exactly what I've been doing, just not as long. So they've been gestating. I keep using this pregnancy metaphor. I overuse it, but that's a wonderful thing that they come in and they bring the life to it. And I feel like they're looking for the road signs, that they need the road signs to know what the container for the life that they have found can be. So usually I'm quite nervous on that first day. But it just feels like a huge, like an offering day. I feel like everybody's doing an offering, the designers, the actors, and myself. And of course, the designers have been working on it as well with us before we see the actors. So it's a very exciting day. It's a something dynamic
you're working with, but I want to get on the feet so fast. And every process is individual, but there are a couple of things about me that are always the same. I stage fast and set slow. I want to get it roughed in as fast as possible, and none of it has to be notarized or cemented, but I need to see the full bones of the piece. So, some people talk about going like deep first, but I go wide first. And the other thing is I always give the actors one for free before I direct. So I break the play up into French scenes, the smallest little bits possible. And I don't solve any problems. I say, these are the entrances available to you. This is the logic of the world. Whatever you want to do. If you want to sit lotus, if you want to stand still, if you want to pay, whatever impulse you have, you should do it right now. I won't stop you, but I also will not solve any problems. So don't ask me, what do you want me to do here? I'm not going to tell you the first time. Always give them one for free. Then go back together and take some, what they were inspired to do, or maybe they weren't inspired to do anything. But it's really important to me that every impulse get a chance in the room. And sometimes I'll personalize these statements because I'm talking to 4 other directors. If I come off too strong, then sometimes actors will repress their impulses, and I never want that. It has to be like Barbara said, like they do it. It has to have buy-in from the actors. And so I want it to be something that we all feel good about. And I don't think that I can get there if I haven't let them try the things they want to try, especially because the way we do theater in this country, I've made so many decisions before they even came in the room. I've already decided what they wear, how many steps they have to walk up. I've already decided what color everything is. They've had so little say that I have to give them a lot of agency and let them be really empowered in the process.
Yeah, I want to say, I almost feel like I have to, not have to, I enjoy doing this now. But I have to use a different part of my brain where, I used to love to just control the show. But as I've gotten older, I've become more trusting. And especially if you're working with really good people, I love the expansiveness that happens when you all of a sudden realize you are in the same world and you're all doing this together. But you literally, there's a point where you go, there it is. And they are creating revelations that you never had in the work. And I just think, and then you're going, that's it. And listening to that level of the room is just breathtaking, but there's an expansiveness that happens, and it doesn't always happen, but when it happens, it's just, it's glorious.
Josh, what about you and staging?
Well, I love table talk. I'm a big nerd for table talk. I find table talk incredibly useful, which is great. Everybody's got their own thing, right? But I really use it to make sure that everybody is really clear on intentions, on why they're saying these words and what they're trying to get from each other and how it's landing and how the structure of the scenes are gearing out. the staging. Like if I don't know that before the staging and we sort of muddle through the staging, figuring that out as we go, I feel like it's all sloppy and needs to get redone. So for me, I want to have, and it'll change, but at least then it changes and we're like, oh, what we thought was not, I spend as much time at the table as I think I could get away with. And just so that the actors are just so, on me to be like, can we get up on our feet now, please? Can we start trying this out? And then once, at a certain point, they just stand up, right? At a certain point, they can't do it at the table anymore, and that's when I know, okay, now we're ready. And that way, their impulses that they're having when we're staging, I feel like are in line with the story we're trying to tell, right? And that everybody has a strong, collective idea about the play. And again, my idea will change, based on what everybody else is coming. But I feel like that way. I like having, something to hang our hats on, something we like have mile markers along the way, so we can say, okay, this is in line with what we're doing, or it's not. And it's so interesting that in fact everything else we were doing maybe needs to change.
I see that Darryl had something that he wanted to add to that.
Yeah.
Well, I did. But I feel like I'm sort of like somewhere in the middle of all of this, or it depends on the project that I'm working on. I do have to say that probably traditionally I'm more into let's get on our feet. And I think that's because I maybe to a fault, some might say, but I tell story and I see intention in the movement, and in the smallest little things. So I like to be on our feet to start exploring intention and objective that way. However, I have also I also tried this in doing a lot of staged readings. It became apparent to me one day after spending like 2 or 3 days preparing to do a reading, and then we did the reading, and I was like, oh my God, now we are ready to stage this show. And I won't have to do as much work.
Right.
Because we have gone through this script and we have done the table work. And when I had that realization that, oh my God, doing the table work is kind of like preparing for a staged reading. And when you're done, you're ready to put it on its feet. So now I'm leaning more in that direction than I have in the past, because I do think the actors are more informed and they can make choices, having more information and more to inform those choices.
All right, so you've staged the play and you've gotten all the actors on the same page, and your set has been built, and all the designers are coming together, and you're having your tech rehearsals, you're having your dress rehearsals. How does the process shift at that point for the director? What I'm sort of opening this up to anybody, but how does what can you do as a director when the stage manager is really running things at that point, right? Because it's all about schedules and what are we working on when, and we got to get this run through in. How are you giving notes to actors after you've already staged the whole play and now you're getting ready to move towards opening? That's a leading question for you all. How about you, Barbara?
Well, there's something about this, what we're talking about. Really, I think probably for all of us, it isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. Every play, in some level, invents its own theater. It's its own invention in the theater. I mean, to know how to give it a life, you have to be open to the fact, and especially now, and especially from wherever we're going to go from now on. Right. We're playing with form in a way, I hope we continue to do that. In the Aurora, to direct in the Aurora is very different than to direct at OSF or Berkeley Rep, because it's so close, it's so intimate. And also, as I was saying, that it just so happens that a lot of the kind of plays that I've been asked to do require decoding. They're not, it's some kind of cryptic language going on in the play, which is one of the reasons also I need table work. And I'm thinking about Splendor. I may have time to tell that story, but it's not that relevant. But the thing is, in the Aurora process, I can sort of be in touch with everyone while it's happening. We can multitask. basically, though, once you go into tech, you're away from the actors, and you're hoping they're gonna find things with each other, that they didn't without you being there. And I love to see that. I love to see when they're powwowing on the stage, because my focus is off the stage with the designers. But as you know, Josh,
at that point, so they're having a whole social thing happening in the dressing rooms at that point too, where they're all able to like be like, oh, do you hear what the director said? Oh,
And the other thing for you, and you know this very well, is that I rarely, unless the play is short, have a chance to give notes in rehearsal time. So I type notes. I spend, it depends on the play again, but it hasn't been unusual in the past for me to leave a 5-hour rehearsal, spend 5 hours going through the play again with notes, so that the actors have a blueprint of something to be looking for every day, even though we're separated. I think
what's an example of a note that you give during that time when you're emailing a note as opposed to giving a note in person? Like, what kind of thing do you say?
Most of the things that I think are, there are two kinds of notes. One is the purely technical. You're not finding your light, or did you know that I planted the thing you're looking for under the kitchen sink? Did you know it was there? These are shortcut things so that the next time we go through, they won't miss it. But most of the time, my process is to continue the dig into the meaning of the play all the time, 24/7. It's all about finding new resonances, new things that where we haven't turned the soil over deep enough. And that's exciting to watch what actors do when you can, here's a light bulb. This is something we didn't find. It's like pigs. Looking for truffles or something. That's the process that's my process with the actors, because the rest of the stuff is not my process with the actors. It's my process with the designers to support what the actors are doing.
Yeah, and sometimes I find that once you see the set and you see the lights and you see the costumes, everything's there, then a whole new resonance appears, and like different things seem significant, and you realize what you actually are doing. And that.
But I think it's always about exhuming the meanings, the resonances, the emotional levels, and the depth. Go deeper and deeper into what the play is saying and what the people are dealing with. There is no way to avoid what I call ice skating for a while on a play. You can't unearth everything that's in it. So every time you repeat, the repetition process allows you to find new things each time. And it's a treasure hunt.
Mm-hmm. I love that metaphor. It's a treasure hunt. The whole rehearsal process is a treasure hunt. I love that. Who else? Anybody else want to jump in and talk about tech and dress rehearsals and previews?
Pigs and looking for truffles.
I just really quickly, I wanted to say that when we were talking about that we don't, sometimes we don't really know the play until it's on its feet. And I think that's with tech and previews. I mean, for me, so much is illuminated once it's up and things are happening together. And yes, to the point of going deeper, making the relationships in between the characters in the play stronger, continuing to explore them. And a lot of work, especially when you have a long preview period. A lot more work can be done through the notes. We just have to know when to stop and let the actors go and send them on their way. But I have to say, the last show I directed, it was up and running. And I went back and I looked at a scene and I said, oh my God, that's wrong. And I had to fix it. And I made a small little fix because it was one of those plays where you have to unpack it. It was so cryptic and I had missed it. I missed a small little thing, but when I fixed it, it made a world of difference. So we see a lot when it's up on its feet, especially those plays you have to unpack.
Yeah, and I think that at that time, as we all know, that I'm really looking at, is what I intended landing within an audience? And even before we've gone to previews, is the choices that are being made, are they readable? Are there opportunities to extend? It's really sort of modulating as well as continue to excavate But I do find for me there's a modulation that's happening is all elements are coming together.
We had a question from the audience about coming back to watch shows after they have opened, which I know some directors come to every performance and keep giving notes all the way through to closing night. Some directors, they're there for opening night and then see you later and they're gone and that's it. How do you guys feel about coming back to see performances of plays that you've directed after opening night?
I do.
Yeah.
I try to. The thing about Hello and Goodbye is that's from another life when I was a freelance director and used to leave. When I used to leave the vicinity of where I was teaching, was directing because I was working all over the country. But I come back every week and I do write notes every week to the actors. Most of the time they're appreciated. Actors want to keep discovering things, is my experience with it.
Yeah, it's amazing how much a show changes over the course of the run. I mean, we go, I now for all the Aurora shows, I come to opening and then I come maybe sometime in the middle and then I come to closing. And closing night is, there's so much has settled and changed. And it's lovely. Yeah.
If I'm local, I'll see a show as many times as I can, especially if I have loved ones or friends who are going to go and be in the audience. I'll go those nights. But I still very much have a freelance career where I'm on a plane the morning after opening, and sometimes it's very hard to leave a show. I don't note shows very heavily, so when I go back to a show after opening, it is very rare that I'll take a note. At most, I might just say to the stage manager, "What's up with that? What happened there? Could you get that back on track?" But I don't give a lot of notes to begin with. So once a show is open, I let the blade of grass lean as much as it's going to.
All right. Let's just go around and I think we're going to wrap this up. But can I just hear from each of you like some final thought about directing, perhaps a moment that stands out from you from a rehearsal process that you had, or anything that's come up in this conversation that you didn't get a chance to say earlier? Perhaps a piece of advice for a young aspiring director. Jennifer, you want to start us off? Any final?
Yeah, I was just thinking about a production of art that I directed, and I remember like a week in, I had staged it all, and there was something that was going on where it was so wrong, and we had a 3-week rehearsal period, and Dodds Delzell and Tim Niffen, who works at your theater a lot, they are in it. And I said, it's completely wrong. We need to flip where this, major piece is in the play. It needs to go over here. I need to restage the whole thing. And first of all, there were 2 actors that absolutely hated me. And but Tim was like, all right, which you can see why I work with him all the time. But it needed to happen. But I just remember something in me said, don't compromise. This is just gonna suck. And I did it, and it, they all flew, and it was great. But it was a big, huge choice. But sometimes you know what you know, and trust that. Yeah. And that's what I would say to young directors: is stay open, listen, get in those rehearsal halls, and be with great people, and listen and watch, and then start trusting yourself.
All right, thank you. How about you, Darryl? Final closing thoughts?
Final closing. Unfortunately, when you were giving us clues for the final closing thoughts, I was getting a sign from Amanda saying, "Turn off your screen share." So my final closing thoughts would be that I can't remember any specific sort of tragedy that I was that I avoided by making last-minute changes. The one thing that comes to mind, the only time I really got really far into the process and changed something was it was a set piece that I kept saying, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this. And then in the end, when I moved it in, I was like, I don't want that.
Yeah. But they always want us, right? They always want us to be decisive and to know what we want. But then they also want us to collaborate and listen to everybody else, right? So we're always caught in this, like, how do we navigate that? And it's very tricky. It's very, but that's the whole trick.
It is tricky, and I think probably that set designer was probably not happy with me. But in the end, I had to make the call that I thought was the best choice for the show. And so if I want to turn that into words of wisdom for young directors, I would say, and I'm looping back to what I said in the beginning, look, young directors, your job is to incite and motivate and inspire your actors and your designers. You want to say yes a lot. You want to say yes a lot. As Dawn was saying in the beginning, oh, yes is so important to open them up and open up their imaginations. But in the end, even though we collaborate a lot more these days and we're moving away from the idea of the director being this older, wiser person in the room and everything is done the director's way, I do think it's far more collaborative these days. But, you know, every sort of institution needs to have a head. And so the head is the director. We just have to be great collaborators and great teachers and great parents sometimes. We have to fill all those roles with a lot of heart. So bring your heart to the game and you'll be okay.
I love that. Thank you so much. How about you, BD? Any final thoughts you'd like to share?
I do. I think some things are coming up, but I would say one thing that I always feel is that the work is never finished, that it's like a novel. You never finish it. And it's a living, breathing thing. I think that I'm probably operating out of a fantasy of a paradigm, which goes back to a different kind of theater, where there were companies and where, you know, they matured together. But there's something about the respect for the play and the idea that it will keep coming up with offerings if you stay focused on it. That process of discovery is ongoing until the last performance. And in fact, you know, I had made jokes about giving notes after the last performance, which I often do. I would say right now that the thing that's most imminent for me is our insecurity right now, is where are we right now? What is the theater right now? I think directors, young directors, are going to be dealing with this question, digesting this question. We all are living in a time of, it's a liminal time. It's a time of great insecurity between things. And I am hoping that the theater will be changing in some ways to, you know, there's a lot of theory that we're either going to integrate or disintegrate, you know, after this process. It's not going to go back to exactly the way it is. I think there are ways in which we've been doing theater that we could improve on. And I'm hoping that young directors, that they can have a little bit more space to offer up their vision of what this thing is, that live performance is, that, you know, having an audience present is. The thing that's so great about Aurora is that you feel presence in Aurora. The audience is seen. Their exchange with the actors is dynamic. So I guess what I really want to say is directing theater, the art itself, it's jazz. It's different every performance. It's live. We can't duplicate it by doing just online chats. We're missing that. And I'm concerned and interested. We're living in interesting times about when we go back, what is theater going to look like? And I think our expression is going to change in relationship to that. So I would say, young directors, just stay in touch with what's moving you, with what inspires you, how to make the world a better place, what your piece of life that you're offering in the theater is saying to the audience. And just, if you can't always do this, make sure that you work on things that resonate, or you find the personal resonances in the projects that you're offered to do.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all three of you, and to Dawn as well. This was a lovely, lovely conversation. We're going to wrap it up here. But if you have further questions or want to check in and talk about directing, talk about the other topics that you might want to hear from Aurora Connects, you can email us at connects@auroratheater.org. Dawn, what are we going to do next week?
Next week, we are going to talk about the Community Partners Program. We'll be joined by a longtime Berkeley High School English teacher and African American Studies teacher, Alan Miller, and some other special guests. And we'll talk about our ongoing partnership with them, student matinees, their response to exit strategy, and plays they've seen at Aurora over the years.
Excellent. Thank you so much. If you'd like to donate to Aurora, you can go to our website and click the donate link at the top right of the page. Thank you all so much. Thanks to our guests. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Amanda, for running the show backstage here. And thank you to everybody, to all of our audience, to everybody out there for watching and for staying connected. We'll see you next week.